So Congress wrote a law that is the law of the land today based on family unification. And what this says, in effect, is that if you immigrate to this country, you may bring your spouse, your children, and your parents. But you may also sponsor for immigration any number of extended family members. So you can also bring in your brother and sister, and they will then bring in their spouse and their in-laws and their children, and then they will bring in her spouse or his spouse will bring in their siblings and their spouses and their children and their in-laws. And this led to a phenomenon known as chain migration. Eventually, you realize everyone in the world will probably be entitled to American citizenship under this law because we are all connected in some way through families. So what this law did is where the old law brought in nuclear families, this law has brought in whole chains of people. We have whole towns, whole villages, whole tribes of people that have moved into the United States. And it has led to millions and millions of people outside this country who believe they're entitled to American citizenship. I saw a story in the New York Times a few years ago that said 60 to 70% of the population of Mexico has a relative here. So under our laws, they're entitled, right? Now, one of the sponsors of the Immigration Act of 1965 was Senator Eugene McCarthy. And some of you may remember him. He was the anti-war candidate in 1968. And I was an anti-war activist. I was one of those that got clean for Gene. Maybe some of you did that, took off your bell-bottoms and your headband. Hillary Clinton did this too, and campaigned for Eugene McCarthy. He was one of the great liberal statesmen from Minnesota. And he sponsored this law. Now, I had known some people from Minnesota who said that before he died, he had said on more than one occasion that the biggest mistake of his political career was to sponsor the Immigration Act of 1965. So I went out looking to get a quote. I never could find a quote. It never, at least from a newspaper or whatever, where he'd said that. But I came across a book that Senator McCarthy wrote in 1993 entitled A Colony of the World, the United States Today. An elder statesman warns his country, by Senator Eugene McCarthy. And by the way, it was not an easy book to find. My library denied that the book existed at first, and I said, oh yes it does, and they had to search for it. Anyway, Senator McCarthy spent 2 chapters in here talking about immigration, and he talked about the problem with the Immigration Act of 1965, that it led to all these effects no one intended. But he goes on to say that every effort to moderate the Immigration Act of 1965 has been defeated in Congress because of the enormous political power of 2 lobbies, the ethnic lobbies composed of Hispanic Americans and Asian Americans, and the business lobbies. And these 2 groups have grown tremendously in size and political power as a result of this law. And so they have effectively defeated any effort to moderate the effects of that law. Now, I'm going to move over to illegal immigration. We have in our legal system, obviously we can't let in everybody who's entitled. So we only issue green cards for about 800,000, and we have a backlog of 4 million people waiting in line to come in through the legal system. And in some of those countries, people will have to wait as long as 15 years to join their family members. And they didn't want to have to wait. And so they came in illegally to be with their families. Many of them did. And that's one of the reasons why illegal immigration has been growing so much, is because of the enormous size of our legal immigrant population. So we're not exactly sure how many illegal immigrants we have. This is a quote that comes from Time magazine. In 2005, they were estimating between 11 and 12. I keep my eye open. I think at this point we clearly have probably closer to 14 million, since it's been 3 years, at least 14 million. There are some very credible sources from Bears and Stearns estimated it's closer to 20 million. We don't really know for sure, but it's probably somewhere at least that between 14 and 20 million illegal immigrants. So who are these people? Well, the majority are from Mexico and Central America. 50% enter without inspection coming across the border, and the other 50% simply fly in as tourists or guest workers and simply overstay their visas. Now, the reason those two numbers are important is this. If we build a wall around the whole country that stops all illegal immigration, I'm not in favor of that, but if we did, it would still only stop 50% of the illegals coming in. The other 50%, as I say, come in as tourists, guest worker visas, and just move in. 2/3 of illegal immigrants lack a high school education. Most illegal immigrants are working in very low-wage jobs, and most are under the age of 35. So looking at this audience, not very many of us are going to be competing with that group of people for our jobs and wages. What's important here also is we hear a politician say almost every month or so, America needs to have an educated workforce to be competitive in the global economy. And yet 2/3 of the immigrants we're taking in are very low skilled and don't speak English. So why are illegal immigrants coming today when they did not come in the past? We didn't have illegal immigration as a significant problem in the 60s, 50s, or back there. So why today? Many people think it's because of the poverty. But the truth is, the poverty and the relative well-being in America are disparities that have always existed. I've also heard people say that the reason we have so many illegal immigrants from Mexico is because of NAFTA. And it is true that NAFTA has been hard on the agricultural industry in Mexico, as it has also harmed many American workers. But the fact is that we passed the first amnesty for illegal immigrants in 1986 for about approximately 2.7 million illegal immigrants, and most of them were from Mexico. So 6 years before the passage of NAFTA, we already had major illegal migration from Mexico. They are also not coming. Some people will say they're coming because they don't have jobs in their own country. Well, according to the Pew Hispanic Center, which is an excellent source of information, the vast majority of undocumented migrants from Mexico were gainfully employed before they left for the United States. So they're coming here not because they couldn't find jobs in Mexico, but because they want better paid jobs. Another reason why illegal immigrants are coming today is that Congress has passed 7 amnesties for illegal immigrants. And I'm sorry this is such a busy screen. I didn't mean for you to read all of them, but I just wanted to make certain we're all on the same page here. Because the media oftentimes only talks about the first amnesty. The fact is there have been 7 amnesties. And millions of illegal immigrants have come to realize that if you stay in this country long enough, you can make the case that you should have citizenship because of hardship, the hardship of returning to your country. Now, a few more things about amnesties. First of all, there hasn't really been another amnesty since the year 2000. The immigration reform movement is a grassroots movement all over America. We've become much more effective, much more better organized, and we have prevented another amnesty from passing since the year 2000. However, more than 45 pieces of legislation calling for amnesty have been introduced since the year 2000. So immigrant advocates are looking and realizing that chances are they're going to get another one. A few years ago, I asked Senator Snowe from Maine, she sent me a 12-page list, single-space typed, of all the business lobbies in America that are working on amnesty for illegal immigrants. So both neocons in the Bush administration and liberal Democrats are on the same page with this. The political elite in America wants cheap labor, they want more consumers, and they will continue to press for amnesties.